And I'm going to start with a quote from Jean-Dominique Crossan, who is one of my favorite authors, and in his book, The Historical Jesus, published some time ago now, 20 years, he said that he was concerned not with an attainable objectivity, but with an attainable honesty. So I hope I can do as much. By the way, I'm here on my second week in Mexico City, and this is about the time in which height malady hits me, and so I might be puffing and coughing. So excuse me for that. It's just that lack of oxygen does not go well with me. Another claim is from Dr. Winston Royce, famous for his Royce waterfall model, which I'm going to claim that the poor man has been misquoted ever since, because I happen to have read Managing the Development of Large Software Systems paper that he published in 1970, and it says, I'm going to describe my personal views about managing large software development. Actually, these are going to be my personal views about Agile, and even though I have had some exchanges with some people that know a lot more than I do about Agile, I claim that certainly this is the view of someone who is perhaps a little bit cynical about our own profession. I was born in 1948, and that's the year of the UNIVAC. And I wrote my first program in 1966, and it was on a 1401 IBM. And it had 1,000, as they were called, memory positions, which is the way people fancily called bytes. So, you know, I had only 1,000 bytes, less than 1K if you're thinking 124, 1,024 for a K. And we had to write programs with that. And of course, it was binary and autocode, and that was it. So, languages were a privilege of those people that had 30,000 K on other computers. At the time, the third generation of computers was being ushered into the world, and I therefore have seen a lot of things in my career. And since my cynicism comes from the fact that we have a tendency to throw the baby with the bathwater. We have created some very intelligent schemes to work, and we have thrown them away and recreated them every 10 years. We change the name of things, and we call them something else, and then we slowly go back into the old ways by rescuing, rightly so, all the old traditions that were working. So what I'm going to do here is start with what are we after. We want to answer the questions, where does Agile come from? I mean, was it born from the head of Zeus, just, you know, completely polished and there were no antecedents? And second is, which is a life cycle that will work in my organization? And here are the questions. The photograph comes from a very famous Monty Python movie, and it says, do we give up on life cycles before we should? For those that are Monty Python fans, as I am, this is when they're carrying people away because of there is the Black Death is taking over Europe, and there's one person that wants to get rid of his uncle or grandfather, I don't remember, even before he is really dead. And we sometimes give up on life cycles without, you know, picking what's better suited for our job, because we just think that novelty is better. So there's a constant search for a silver bullet in our profession that should have been better advised by the famous the mythical 1 month in which the author has claimed more than once that there is no silver bullet. So here's my agenda. First, let's look at life cycles in history and more or less where it all started. It doesn't start with the rise waterfall, but the previous attempts were quite tepid. Then we're going to discuss a little bit about spiral because I see it coming up again and again. So here's the where do I get all this information from? Well, first, the historical information is because I lived it. But the information about how people doing things, I pick up on my activity as a consultant and mostly as a lead appraiser. So I see what people are doing and how they are calling it does not, it's funny that they rediscover some of these things. For example, a lot of people are using some aspects of spiral in selecting the way they are going to organize their sprints. And we'll talk more about that later. We're also going to talk about joint application development, which was, or joint application design, as it was later called, which was the first time boxing idea that we came across in software development. Of course, rational unified process and the rapid application development and rapid application prototyping are all ancestors of ways of doing things that are far and away from what we call Royce's waterfall. And then I'm going to go into some examples of extreme programming, TDD, test-driven development, Scrum, in which I'm going to discuss offhand, can we do Scrum and still claim that we're doing development within the CMMI framework? Can we satisfy some of the practices or most of the practices of a model? And finally, a little about which is my favorite agile method because it's so amenable to planning, which is FDD, feature-driven development. And if you have not heard about feature-driven development before, probably this is the most important thing you will hear in today's presentation. So here we go. Let's take this back to the 60s when I started programming, and we had this horrible word, which was methodology, and which actually was described by initially by Jordan at one point as methods plus processes, plus some semantic modeling languages, which were not formal at the time, but they were modeling languages. They would model the system that had to be implemented, and they were semantic in that they tried more to capture the essence of what needed to be done than the how it was going to be done. And the most influential principle was hierarchical decomposition. So we had there things like hierarchical input, process, output, which is the drawing to your right. So you had on the left, you had a bar which said these are all the inputs, and on the right you had another bar that said these are all the outputs. Okay, what do we need to do to transform the inputs into outputs? And this was mainly batch. Everything was batch those days. Then came some improvements on that. It's all right. So we have that blue square there that says do the following. How do we design that little square? And in came structured design. There was a Michael Jackson from England, not the Michael Jackson with the sequin and the moonwalk, but a very influential person that actually created a couple of very good ways of